Hi everyone, and welcome back for more flower paintings. So it's summertime now, already not spring, and I'm painting some flowers from my garden again. So this time I will show you palette and hopefully it will work. So this is my glass palette. Unfortunately there are some leftover paint there, but I'll try to be very clear. So this is a titanium white I have, and yellow ochre, cadmium yellow light, cadmium yellow deep, cadmium red light, terra rosa. This is magenta and alizarin, ultramarine blue. This is green, used to be viridian, but I put some cooler green. I forgot the name of it, but it could be any green really. So this is a burnt sienna. There is another green, like very bright green, and there is some raw umber here. So I'm going to maybe scrape some of the, so glass palette is very good for scraping colors. Maybe I will scrape some of these colors so when I mix it will be easier to see. So I scraped some of this when I start mixing new ones. But to tell the truth, sometimes I put it on side of the palette and use as for grays. Maybe it's not a good practice, but sometimes it works. So my palette looks cleaner now, and I will not be holding it all the time. I will be showing it on and off just so you could see it. So what I did, I primed already my panel. I did some preliminary work. I did drawing. I did the vase and contours of the flower silhouette, and I did a little bit of background. So background was raw umber and blue with a little bit of transparent red oxide, and here was yellow ochre and white, and I think it was a little bit of raw umber as well. Raw umber is a cooler brown, so it kind of gives you that kind of how to say, coolness in the brown color, more in the gray. So I mixed, right now mixed green and brown in one pile, and this is going to be my darkest greens. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to squint, and actually I'm adding a tiny bit of more brown, so I'm squinting and painting greens that I see, the darkest greens of my vase. Just that color, using bristle brush, squinting, and I'm adding a little bit of raw umber because at the bottom here it seems to be quite dark, because I managed to stuff this vase with roots and all kind of things. So just adding tiny bit of yellow ochre here in the vase, and now I'm mixing yellow ochre and green here on the palette. So it's a neutral tone, a neutral color green, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of that in the areas where I see it, especially in the light. You can see it in the vase as well. In the vase it's a little bit lighter, so I'm adding to the same mixture a little bit of white, especially in this area, just a little bit of white. And then to the same mixture I'm adding cadmium yellow deep. That's for the lightest part of greens. Sorry, it's cadmium yellow light. Sorry. So it kind of gives me my greens. And I paint over background brown, mixing it together, and that's okay too, because that's kind of flows one into another, especially in the areas where it's further away. So I mixed some white now, tiny bit of blue and some raw umber, so it's like very, very light gray color. So I can see that this color is on this in the glass and goes in some areas here as well. Kind of trying to see. Trying not to lose my shape of the vase, but not to overdoing things either. So the vase in this case, because it's so stuffed, it's very dark. I'm going to go with stems later, but for now I'm adding a little bit of green to that white and a little bit of yellow, just to emphasize that light that passing through the vase, and just tiny bit of gray here and there. So this raw umber really worked for me well as a vase color. So have a little bit of green here, and then I'm going into flowers. I don't think I'm going to wipe yet anything, so I'm cleaning my brush really, really well in solution, and I'm going to mix some kind of purple color. So I'll mix it first and then I'll show you. Actually, I'll show straight away. So I'm using some blue, some magenta, and I'm getting some terra rosa for warmth. So that's my color for the darkest areas, adding terra rosa more because I want more warmth in that, and maybe a little bit of alizarin. That made it really bright, so I'm going back to magenta and back to alizarin, so this kind of color. So starting from the back colors, and I may be adding as I go, I may be adding a little bit of white into it, but not yet. So squinting and here it's a little lighter. Yes, I added already on the side so I could see. I added a little bit of white. So kind of painting this cloud. There is one here that I will paint later. There are some purple flowers here. So they want that individual flowers later. I'm going to maybe wipe around if they don't show up very well, but we'll see. Anyway, so there's darker, definitely dark on this side where the light doesn't fall on them. So I'm adding more dark purple in here. And then I'll be going through some, so I put deliberately them as clusters so it's easier to look at clusters than separate flowers. Then you can see that individual flowers don't need to be painted once you have clusters in place. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to work a little bit more on background. So I'm still using raw umber and brown. Raw umber and brown, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of white. So that kind of neutral brown color, and go through the areas. So, and maybe even do some carving of flowers with background. So that's my job right now, to focus and go around these So that's what I'm doing. I may not talk during this time. And where I see darker, I do darker, and where I see lighter, I go lighter. Again, this is a bristle brush, so the light goes, the paint goes well on the linen with bristle brush, especially when you want to scrub it in. Adding a little bit of coolness in this area, especially dark and cool. This flower goes a little bit further, so I'll go back to it later. And I don't use any medium right now, just what I normally use for thinning the paint. Gray in this area, cool and gray. Now adding a little bit more brown. I have a brown material. This one is a little bit warmer. Just adding. And again, I can work on background later. Just want to put the main masses so I could work with it. So there is a tabletop at the back, so I'm going to kind of quickly put it in, because I have flowers on the table as well. I don't think they fit, but I'll try and see. But for now I think I'll just leave it. I don't think they will fit that well. So I have my underpainting a little bit going through. That's okay. So now I'm going from dark to lights, and I'm going to change brush as well. So this is my palette again. This is the purples I did. These are the browns I did in background, and greens. So I'm going to use a softer brush now, and as a synthetic brush. So I'm going to start going through the flowers and see where I can do brighter, lighter. Just trying to watch, so mixing a little bit more of this purple, touch of blue, and actually I have a very nice color that I add. It's purple. It's nice for these flowers only, nothing else. Maybe for lilacs. It's a very, very strong color. It's called alizarin purple. So I only use this color occasionally. Probably use it in spring, only for like purple flowers, for some purple things I'm painting, mostly flowers really. So now I look at the flowers at the back, so using more, even some brown in this. So I'm looking at the flowers that in here, so they are very dull and warmer purple. So I'm working on these flowers right now. A little bit lighter in this area. Not too much light. And a little bit light in this area. Some petals are light, some petals are not very light, so I have to watch and see which ones are lighter. At the same time not losing my darks that I did earlier. Probably too much. So, working with the same paint that I mixed originally, just keep adding more when I need. It's too bright. When I see it's too bright or too much, kind of trying to correct it. Try not to add too much white everywhere yet, because it's very easy to add white and then lose what you had. So I'm trying to not to do that. So at this point I'm going to add a little bit more brown. It happened to be burnt sienna, that brown, so I could mix some blue and brown together and cover around the flowers that I have here. So like here, for example. Then I maybe go in the actually the brightest flowers, because this way they will be done and I will be comparing lots of flowers to them. So there's a big mass of flowers here. I'm not painting individual flowers, like I said, I just give suggestion. And there's moss over there and moss over here as well. Small batches, so I will add a little bit of that purple and see how it works. It just doesn't need too much of it. See how it works. That's that purple. See, it's cooler, but it's nice. And some of the flowers more pink, some more purple, so that also gives nice variety, because some of them already almost finished flowering, the others still blooming. That's why the colors are different as well. And of course exposure to the light, darker, lighter. squinting and painting. So that's some dark flowers here that I need to break down with greens. Actually, there is some green in between here. So I'm using some. A good thing I'm not going to contaminate it a lot, because greens and purples, like I said, always in flowers work so well. Same as with lilacs, even when those greens very dark or is they're very light. So it's always good to correct and break down a little bit greens into there. So I'll keep doing that. So it looks like I went into flowers and then I went into greens. The other thing that I'm going to, as I go, when I see silhouette of flowers I went too far here, I'm correcting it with background. And then I go back and adjusting my flower. Kind of work back and forth, because there are cooler, closer to the light, and cooler flowers on this side. And the main thing, not to contaminate the brush. Especially on the lighter ones. So I think sometimes I have this problem. So I'm trying to wipe my brush more often. I have some flowers sticking out. That adds nice variation. So I'm using the tip of my brush, even though I'm not going fully into the greens yet. I'm in the lighter greens. Sometimes it's nice to add just a little bit of variation, especially that I see lots of greens going there. So I'm going to use some very strong green, because they're very bright actually there, and mixed with cadmium yellow light. So I'm going to show. So I will be using this bright, very bright green that you see in this one, where I see it. So I have a little bit of accident here. My brush fell over, so I'll have to do a quick wiping, very quick wiping. So I wouldn't step on it. It happens, accidents happen in the painting room normally. Unfortunately, bright green is not very good color to put on the floor. Anyway, I'll continue and wipe it more later, so at least it's not on the way. Okay, so I'll continue with this bright green that is very good at marking the carpets and floors. And correcting where I need to. So I put too many greens here, so I'm correcting with my background color. Putting more flowers at the back. The contrast is not as strong there. I don't have many flowers at the back, just few on the stems. So the tip of the brush is very good to use for those areas where there are some brighter stems going. Even though there are lots of there, I'm not going to put all of them, just the ones that mixed very bright purple color. So just the ones that I see most like distinct for me. Probably I put too much of purple, so I'm going to warm it up a little bit with red. And again, this is just darkest still. I'm not putting all my lightest lights at this point. I'm still reserving them for the flowers. That's going to be the brightest ones. And also the texture of the paint will help to do that. So my eye fell on the vase and I thought, oh, I need to see if I can do this a little lighter, because I can clearly see the color coming, or the light coming here. And of course there is some darker in there. So the colors that I use for darkest greens still the same, and I had to put burnt sienna as my brown, and you can tell the difference that it's not very. The concealer that I have is I think it was a student grade. I bought it by mistake or something. It's not very strong, so pigment is really, really bad. So one thing I learned: never save money on good paints, because it will cost more in the end. I learned it hard way. When you don't buy good paint, the background, the color is not going to be very strong, and you have to use more paint. So eventually. So now I'm thinking to put some of those, I see brown stems, lots of brown stems. I'm using lots of that brown because it just doesn't give me the right color I need. But I think I got it now. So I'm using those brown stems, they're kind of curling in my glass, and then I will do with lighter ones as well. It's quite dark on this side. And now I can do some lighter stems here as well. So I'm using cadmium yellow light and that green I had. just putting here and there a few little stems. And I think I didn't do this glass again. The edge of the glass is actually dark, but then there is a light bit coming through it. And it's a very strong, distinct highlight, so I'm going to do it with a touch of cool green in it. Do like this. And then correct it a little bit. And have another go. So my edge, I don't see it that well of the glass because I packed so well the branches that I don't see really the edge of my, and I have lots of warm greens in it as well, like almost red, some stems almost red, so I can add some of it in the glass. And like I said, I'm working with this brown that doesn't work with me that well, but we'll get there. So some a bit of highlight gun. I don't have to indicate the edge of the glass when I don't see it. Just have to add this highlight back. And I have to add this brighter color on this side. It's not very yellow, but there is some kind of glow in it on this side. At the same time, I don't want to make it very light because the glass is packed. Okay, I think I'm going to leave this glass for now. Background color still okay. So going back to my flowers, probably will go with background brush first and try to see where I can change anything. So I'm going through everything, kind of scanning the whole painting for bigger shapes now. So I'm going through the, fortunately I picked something not very good. There's always something. There is dark color still at the bottom, and it's even bluish, kind of cool color. So I'm going through this cluster to cover around it. The small flower will leave for now. Go through this one. This one is very dark inside. So kind of, I had to go around it just because I didn't like the shape, how it is there, so going back with this color. cluster, and then there is one cluster above it. They're very similar in color. I'm going to indicate that one. So this probably the closest to the light flowers, this particular cluster, so I'm going to add a tiny bit of white to these flowers, and the one that here, white with touch of that purple, and a little bit more white where the lightest light is coming. The same I will do on some, like there is a tiny bit here. When I say tiny, and put a big blob of paint without realizing how much I had on my paint, so I have to make it in a tiny bulb. And then there are flowers above that also very light. And to make it a little darker, I have to go into darkness more. On this side. So I'm picking quite a lot of paint here. And then I'm going back to background color and work on some of this. Some of them are very far. I can hardly see them. I'm going back to this brown. It gets a little warmer on this side, so I'll keep it the same way as it is. Now I need to go with the lighter stems. Just I see some of them, but not too much. Some of them curl a little, but I don't want to overdo. They're very interesting flowers, one of my favorite, because you can choose to paint them as clusters, or you can choose to paint them even like individual flowers if you want to start as a flower. They have very interesting greenery around them, so it's a lot of fun to paint them. Try not to make them very bright though, where I don't need to. So the flowers at the back not as much seen, and to tell the truth, I don't even know where this purple comes from. It's very strange that I painted it. Obviously I didn't pay attention to this one, so I have to paint over it. Because it's not there and it doesn't look right to me. But there are some kind of bluish, purplish flowers at the back, almost like greenish, so I'm adding this color. I added to my purples tiny bit of alizarin, ultramarine, and even green. So alizarin and green create this, or alizarin and magenta actually even better purple color with green. Sorry, I didn't say that you have to add green to that one. So now I'm going to add a tiny bit of purple I had before, but only for some flowers. There's some flowers going off the canvas. Don't need this pink in here because I don't have lots of bright flowers in here, just on the edge of petals. The rest of the flowers actually not very bright. I think this one even too bright. So I'm kind of going through this shadow again. Shadow flowers. Maybe just edges of some of them will be slightly lighter, but not all. And this on top. I'm going to be a little bit lighter. Some flowers in the background. So I think I'm getting there, how to say. So just need to indicate some greens here, and the warm greens, so I'll have to add a little bit more brown. So those, the kind of, when you break the greens in between flowers, and I don't have to really recreate them, they are there. So that kind of makes flowers to pop up. So this brown, very bad brown, but I still use it. Can throw it away now. Sometimes I use it for underpaintings and other things. So there are some stems that fall in the light for these particular flowers. So I'll try to use those with, again, the same mixture. Same mixture of green and brown, or yellow when needed. So there is some branch going here, even on the table. I actually put some branches, so I could paint some flowers on the table, and some of them I was thinking to paint some flowers on the table. There are some petals there. So I'll see if I can quickly do those as well. So the flowers on the table, really, you have the main thing to make sure that they have cast shadow under them, so they're not floating in the air. So I'm using the same shadow color for the vase as for the flowers. This branch has some light on it. And I'm using terra rosa for warmer branches that these flowers have, so I'm going to kind of go with this terra rosa through some areas where I see red. I'm going with purple as well at some flowers where I need more light. Go back to this one as well. So I might try to make it even lighter in some areas. Now that my main lights are kind of decided, I can do a little bit more of those that I didn't do before. So one thing I'm going to do, this cluster actually has greens in between, so I need to go with the green in between more, even more, very carefully. Hopefully I can do it. And then I'm going to deepen the shadow of that one as well on this side. So the other areas that I see need some depth. So I'm going through the areas, sometimes just adding a little bit of greens in between. Those areas really helps to bring them up, and normally those areas are warm rather than cool. So I'm trying to bring to life that brown that doesn't work with me. So I'm squinting. This is my darkest area, and have broken down this area. And there is area here. Have to work with my brush really carefully. So those areas in the dark. Now I'm looking at my highlight again, and it bothers me again. So I'm going to do it a little bit more on this side. Actually, it's a cooler green on one side, so I'm taking my brush and just drag it. And drag that I need to correct here. So I kind of messed my highlight as always, so I'm going to paint over it. I wanted to bring that nice, cool brown that I saw, or that green, but unfortunately it worked against me, so I'm going to do it again. Sorry for the mess. Sometimes you need to play with it and see what works, what doesn't work. Obviously, I'm going to leave it so not to make it worse, because it didn't work how I wanted, so I'm just going to leave it alone. Because then the paint will become if you put too much paint, the paint gets worse and you don't manage it as easy. So the few brush strokes you put on it, they actually works better. And right now I have to paint over it with a thicker layer, and a good thing my brush is very soft, so I can still do it. Yeah, I can still bring my dogs back, but I really shouldn't mess with it that much. Still drag my greens in there. But what is under flowers is really dark, so I have to make sure those dogs are still there. So still not happy with I don't think I have the right. Have to clean it all and do it again. It's kind of getting messy. Please don't do this. What I do. Don't mess with your highlights. I think I say it in every video. Please don't mess with your highlight. Never leads to anything good. As you can see. But I think it's worth seeing how you shouldn't do, then you know what you shouldn't do. So really highlight goes like as one stroke and nothing else. Maybe just emphasize it a little in one area and that's it. Just leave it alone. I think I'm going to leave it alone. I'd rather leave it unfinished than overworked. So last go on the flowers. So I'm taking a smaller brush, this type of brush. It's synthetic and it's very fluffy, but it may do the job because it has those uneven hairs on it, as you can see. It's kind of split, so sometimes it's good to do flowers with it. So I'm just doing individual petals where I see the lightest lights. So like here I lost some of the color and light, so I'm doing some of those. I think I went too far with it. Shouldn't be that bright really, because it's a little bit in the shade. Yeah, so very carefully with this one without overdoing, because you don't want to paint the same flowers millions of times. And the one that in the shade as well. Just going to touch them tiny bit. Because I was doing some greens there. Not in the shadow, I meant, not in the shade. And I don't use a thicker paint on those either. So now, once I did those flowers, I started seeing that on a second look, maybe I put too many flowers in there. So I just do this background. I'm going to do with background color, just eliminate some of those that I don't need. And I think at that point I will be done, and then I have second look at it and see where can I improve. And where I can remove some things that I don't need. So a little bit of cast shadows here. Really working with a smaller brush sometimes gives you unnecessarily details that you don't really need, even though it seems you're going into details, but do you really need those details? You don't know. So I'm going to break through with this as well. Okay, so going with my background color, and it's kind of grayish color, going with that color here. So from details to the and back to the general approach, so back and forth, that's a quite good help. To look at your painting from bigger scale and then look at your painting from a detail perspective. So like right now I can see that I went too far with this. I don't even have some of those flowers there that much. I should generalize in a big cluster, and that's about it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll just go a little bit there with darker color and kind of go on the edges. It's soft. That's about it. Don't have that many flowers there. I think when you start painting you get excited and sometimes go too much in the detail, so that's why you need to go back and try to eliminate those details. So like I said, I was going with that green and purple, so I completely looks like I lost it over there. The only thing I want to keep some direction of the branches in that area. Okay, I think and I don't need white here either. I think I'm approaching the point when I'm going to finish and look at that painting once again, maybe tomorrow, and hope that flowers will not die, and see if there'll be some other corrections. For now I'll finish this video, and I hope you learned something interesting, or maybe learned some things you don't have to do like I do. So I hope you to see again. Maybe I'll make it shorter, this video, because I think it went a little bit longer than I expected. I thought I would do a shorter video, but sometimes you plan one thing and happens the other. So I think just here I forgot for general flow. There were some nice branches there and some nice flowers. I just do a little bit there. Just hardly see those, but they had nice depth. Maybe even here. Just do a little bit deeper. I added some brown actually to those. Okay, so this probably wasn't the best as I expected, but I think you always have different outcomes when you do things. So then I think like a tabletop candle definitely lighter than my flowers and then my background. Okay, so I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.